The rain had stopped, but the riverside rest stop was still swallowed by silence. Trucks pulled in and rolled out. Doors slammed shut. No one noticed the little girl curled up on the curb, hugging a backpack that looked heavier than she was. She didn't cry. She didn't wave for help. She just stared at the road as if she were waiting for a car that was never going to come back. When Declan Voss stepped out of the black Escalade, he almost walked right past her until she spoke, softer than a whisper. "My dad forgot me." He froze. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Calm in a way that felt ice cold. As if being left behind was simply an obvious fact, not something worth crying over. The most powerful mafia boss in the Northeast dropped to one knee, level with the eyes of a child he didn't know. "What do you mean?" "Forgot, sweetheart." She pointed toward the highway where headlights kept sweeping through the night. "Dad said he'd be back soon." That soon was the day before. Her phone was dead. No food, no coat, only a name. Scrolled across her wrist. Harper Quinn, already fading with sweat and the residue of dried tears. Declan Voss rose slowly. He didn't call the police. He didn't ask anything else. He turned back to his vehicle, started the engine, and drove away. Only a short distance. Then he stopped because something in the girl's eyes that had seen far too much for a little girl, told him this wasn't carelessness. This was the desperation of a father. And because there are promises that once broken can only be mended by the kind of man willing to burn the whole world behind him. Declan Voss was exactly that kind of man. Stay with me until the end of this video because what he discovers about the father who forgot his daughter and the mysterious woman they meet along the way changes the lives of all four of them forever. Before we begin, if you believe miracles come from the people who don't walk away, tap like to support the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss stories that reach the heart. And if someone needs to hear this story, share it with them. The black Escalade turned around in the darkness. Its headlights swept across the wet pavement and landed squarely on the small figure still sitting motionless on the curb. Harper didn't move. She didn't even lift her head when the sound of the engine drew closer, as if it no longer mattered whether someone came back or drove away. Declan shut off the engine and stepped out for the second time that night. This time, he wasn't in a hurry. He walked toward her slowly, each step carrying a question he still didn't know how to shape into words. When he sat down beside Harper on the cold concrete curb, she finally turned to look at him. No fear, no hope, just a measuring stare, as if she were trying to read the intentions of this stranger. "You came back." Harper's voice was as light as breath. "Yeah." Declan nodded. "I came back. Why?" That simple question left Declan silent for a moment. He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, and didn't want to admit it. Instead, he asked one of his own. "Your name's Harper, right? I saw it written on your wrist." Harper nodded, instinctively lifting her hand to rub the fading letters. "Dad wrote it. Dad said if I got lost, people would know who I am." Something tightened in Declan's chest. A father writes his daughter's name on her wrist before leaving her alone. That wasn't carelessness. That was preparation. Preparation for the worst. "What does your dad do for work, Harper?" "Office work," Harper answered right away, like she'd been taught to say it. "He sits at a computer a lot. He says his job is really boring, but it looks like your dad's job isn't so boring, is it?" Harper went quiet. Her eyes dropped to the backpack resting on her lap, her small fingers gripping the straps as if she were afraid someone might snatch it away. "And your mom?" Declan asked more gently. "Where's your mom?" For the first time since he'd met her. Declan saw a flicker of pain move through Harper's eyes. Only a flicker. And then she returned to that strange calm. "My mom's in heaven. She was sick. Cancer. She died when I was little." The words came out with an acceptance no little girl should ever have. Declan had met every kind of person in his life. Cold-blooded killers, ruthless bosses, hitmen who didn't know fear. But the stillness in this child made his spine go cold. This was the calm of someone who had grown used to loss, who had learned not to cry because crying didn't change anything. Do you have any other family? Grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone? Harper shook her head. It's just Dad and me. Dad said, as long as we have each other, that's enough. Declan looked around. The rest stop was still empty. Now and then, a truck passed, headlights cutting a bright streak before vanishing into the night. No one stopped. No one saw this child. Or maybe they saw her and chose not to. Are you hungry? Harper gave a small nod. I ate all the cookies in my backpack in the morning before. The morning before? Meaning this child hadn't eaten anything in a long time. Anger surged in Declan's chest, not at Harper, but at the world that had left a little girl sitting here alone and starving, while hundreds of cars kept sliding past as if she were invisible. All right. Declan stood, brushing dust from his pants. I'm going to take you to get something to eat. Then we're going to figure out what happened to your dad. Harper looked up at him, and for the first time, there was something different in her eyes. Not quite hope, but maybe curiosity. Who are you? Declan hesitated for a second. He could have lied, could have made up a name, a normal job, a normal life. But looking into the eyes of a child who'd seen too much dishonesty already, he didn't want to add one more lie. I'm the person who won't leave you here. Harper stood and swung the backpack onto her shoulders. She was so small, the backpack nearly covered her entire back, but she walked steadily, needing no hand to hold, no arm to steady her. My dad said that too, Harper said as she walked toward the Escalade. Dad said he'd never leave me. The sentence hung in the night air, heavier than any accusation Declan had ever heard. He opened the door for Harper, watched her climb into the back seat and buckle her seatbelt with the practiced ease of a child used to long drives. Declan slid into the driver's seat and looked into the rearview mirror. Harper was holding her backpack. Her eyes turned to the window and the darkness beyond it. He didn't know what he was doing or why he was doing it. He only knew he couldn't leave this child behind. The Escalade pulled away from the Riverside rest stop, its tail lights glowing red, blinking, then disappearing into the night. And Declan Voss, the most powerful mafia boss in the Northeast, stepped into a war without yet knowing who his enemy was. Streetlights blinked past the car windows like pale drifting streaks. Declan drove slower than he usually did, his eyes lifting now and then to the rearview mirror to check on Harper. She'd fallen fast asleep, her head resting against the glass, the backpack still clutched tight in her arms, as if it were the only thing she had left in the world. Looking at that small, fragile sleeping shape, Declan felt an old memory push its way up from the deepest place in his mind, the place he'd tried to bury for a long time. Years ago, there had been a child curled up on a sidewalk, too, hungry and shaking with cold. That child had been him. Declan Voss, little, abandoned by his mother outside a church in South Boston on a bitter winter night. She'd said she'd be back soon. That soon had stretched into forever. He'd never known his father's face. He had no relatives. He had only a name and empty hands. The years that followed were a stretch of hell he never wanted to remember, an orphanage where the straps came down hard, foster families who wanted nothing but the government checks, nights on the street because he couldn't take the abuse anymore. Declan learned early that this world had no place for the weak. You either became strong or you got crushed. He chose to become strong. Declan joined his first gang. He already had a name in Boston's underworld. He held the southern part of the city in his fist. No one in the Northeast dared say his name without fear riding alongside it. Declan Voss built his empire out of blood, sweat, and a cold, deliberate cruelty. He never struck when it wasn't necessary, but when it was, he never hesitated. And yet, even in that dark world, Declan kept one boundary for himself. One principle he never broke, no matter the reason. He didn't touch women, he didn't touch children. That was the last line between him and the truly monstrous. Plenty of men in the life laughed at him for it, called it weakness. But Declan knew it wasn't weakness. It was how he kept his soul from slipping completely into the dark. Because every time he saw a child abandoned, abused, erased by the world, he saw himself. The little boy sitting outside the church waiting for a mother who would never come back. The boy sleeping in a dumpster to escape the cold. The boy fighting bigger boys just to keep a scrap of bread in his hand. That was why he'd stopped when he saw Harper. Not because he was a good man. Declan knew better than anyone that he wasn't. He'd done things ordinary people couldn't imagine. He'd given orders he would never speak out loud to anyone. But when he looked into Harper's eyes, those empty eyes, that terrifying calm, he saw the shadow of the child he'd been. The child who'd waited for someone to come back. No one came back for Declan. But tonight, he would come back for Harper. The SUV kept rolling through the night. Declan didn't know where he was taking her or what he was going to do next. He only knew something was deeply wrong. A father didn't leave his daughter at a rest stop for a long time unless there was a reason. And whatever that reason was, it was serious enough to make a man write his child's name on her wrist before he vanished. Declan's phone buzzed. He glanced down at the screen. Silas, his right hand, the one man he trusted completely in a world built on betrayal. Declan hit the button to answer, but before he could speak, Silas's voice came through tight with worry. "Boss, where are you?" The Chicago meeting ended hours ago. Everybody's asking. Declan kept his eyes on the dark road ahead. Something came up. "Get me everything you can on a man named Ronan Hayes and find the nearest clinic that's still open right now." There was a beat of silence on the other end. "Who's Ronan Hayes?" Declan lifted his eyes to the rearview mirror where Harper slept on, unaware. "That's what I'm trying to find out." The small clinic sat a short distance off the highway, tucked into a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights flickered and insects droned endlessly in the night. Silas had texted the address only minutes after the call, along with a short note saying it was the only place still open within a good distance. Declan pulled up out front and looked at the weather-worn sign. The words Greenwood Community Clinic faded with time. Warm yellow light spilled from inside, a small island of comfort in the cold dark. Harper woke when the car came to a stop. She didn't say anything. She just stared out the window in silence, eyes still heavy with sleep. Declan got out, opened the back door, and held his hand out to her. "We're going inside. I want to make sure you're okay." Harper nodded, climbing down on her own without needing help. She swung the backpack onto her shoulder and followed Declan toward the clinic door. The glass door opened with a soft chime that announced a visitor. Inside, the waiting room was empty. Plastic chairs lined the walls in a neat row, and an old television played the late-night news at low volume. The faint smell of antiseptic hung in the air. Declan scanned the space, the instinct of a man used to measuring every room for exits and hidden threats. A voice came from the reception desk. "Hello, how can I help you?" The voice cut off abruptly. Declan turned and saw a woman behind the counter holding a clipboard, her eyes wide as she stared at Harper. She looked about that age, brown hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck, her face pale with exhaustion. But what caught Declan's attention wasn't her fatigue. It was her eyes, deep blue eyes filled with a sorrow that ran far deeper than one sleepless night. The kind of sorrow born from years of pain, and right now those eyes were fixed on Harper as if she were looking at a ghost. The woman stood perfectly still for a few seconds, the clipboard nearly slipping from her fingers. Then she blinked as if yanking herself awake from a dream and forced her voice to steady. "I'm sorry. How can I help you?" Declan stepped closer to the counter, one hand resting lightly on Harper's shoulder. "I found this little girl at the Riverside rest stop. She was there alone for many hours. I want to make sure she isn't dehydrated or dealing with any health issues." The woman looked down at Harper, then up at Declan, then back at Harper again. Her gaze lingered on the oversized backpack on the child's shoulder, on the tired eyes that were somehow strangely calm, on the faint lettering on her wrist. "Oh my God," she murmured, her voice catching. She was alone that whole time? Declan nodded. She didn't ask why he was the one bringing Harper in or what he was to the child. She simply hurried out from behind the desk and knelt in front of Harper, bringing herself level with the girl's eyes. "Hi, sweetheart. My name's Sophia. I'm a nurse here. Can you tell me how you're feeling?" Harper studied Sophia for a moment, as if deciding whether this woman deserved her trust. Then she answered in a small, quiet voice, "I'm a little tired and hungry." Sophia smiled, but the smile couldn't hide the pain in her eyes. "All right, I'll check you first, and then I'll find you something to eat. Will you come with me?" Sophia rose and held out her hand. Harper hesitated for a second, glancing at Declan as if asking permission. He gave a slight nod. The little girl placed her small hand in Sophia's and let her lead her into the exam area. Declan sat down in a chair in the waiting room, but his eyes never left the door Harper had gone through. Through the small window in the door, he watched the way Sophia cared for her. The nurse checked temperature, blood pressure, and pulse with gentle, careful movements. She spoke to Harper in a soft voice, smiling now and then when the girl answered. There was a tenderness in the way Sophia treated Harper that Declan recognized immediately. It wasn't the professionalism of a nurse with a patient. It was something deeper, something personal, as if Sophia was seeing someone else when she looked at Harper. Later, Sophia brought Harper back out into the waiting room. The girl held a small carton of milk in a sandwich, eating in tiny bites with the caution of someone who was used to going hungry. She's mildly dehydrated, and her blood sugar is low, Sophia told Declan, her voice still faintly unsteady. I've had her drink water and eat a little. She needs rest. Declan stood, his gaze locked on Sophia's. You looked at her like you knew her. Sophia went even paler. She turned away, pretending to straighten the stack of files on the counter, but Declan could see her hands shaking. I don't know her, but you saw someone else when you looked at her. Sophia didn't move, her back still to Declan. Silence stretched for several seconds. Then she spoke, a whisper, as if afraid of her own words. She looks like my daughter. So much that when I saw her walk in, I thought I was dreaming. Declan said nothing. He didn't ask for more. He didn't need to. The way Sophia said, my daughter, not my daughter when she was little, said everything. Harper sat on a plastic chair in the waiting room, her legs swinging where they didn't reach the floor, chewing slowly on the sandwich Sophia had given her. Sophia sat beside her, leaving just enough space so the girl wouldn't feel crowded, but close enough that Harper would know someone was there. Declan stood a few steps away, his back against the wall, watching the two of them in silence. Do you have kids? Harper's voice came out of nowhere, making Sophia flinch. The simple question slid in like a blade, straight into a wound that hadn't healed. Sophia needed a few seconds just to find her breath again. Why do you ask? Harper tilted her head, studying Sophia with eyes older than her years. Because you look at me the way my mom looked at me. My mom used to look at me like that, like I was the most precious thing in the world. Sophia's eyes burned. She tried to swallow down the ache rising in her throat. I used to have a little girl. Her name was Ava. Used to, Harper repeated softly. That means she's not here anymore. Sophia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She hadn't said Ava's name to anyone in years. She tried to bury that memory, lock it in a dark corner of her soul, and throw away the key. But tonight, looking at Harper, she couldn't pretend anymore. I'm sorry, Harper said. So sincere it almost made Sophia cry. I know what it feels like to lose someone you love. My mom's gone, too. They sat in silence for a while, a silence that wasn't heavy, but strangely comforting. Two hearts shaped by loss, trained to live with holes that could never be filled, had somehow found each other in the dark. Harper's gaze dropped and stopped on Sophia's arm. Sophia's sleeve had slid up slightly when she reached for a carton of milk for Harper, revealing a long scar running from her wrist to near her elbow. Time had faded it, but it was still clear, a rough, pale pink ridge against her light skin. Does it hurt here? Sophia followed Harper's eyes, instinct telling her to tug her sleeve down and hide it. But she didn't. Instead, she left her arm resting on her lap, letting the scar sit exposed under the waiting room's yellow light. It's a scar from a car accident. Years ago, for a brief moment, memory crashed over her like a violent wave. Sophia saw that night again, the car speeding through the rain. Damon behind the wheel, eyes bloodshot from alcohol, mumbling useless excuses about a gambling debt he couldn't pay. Ava in the back seat hugging her stuffed bear, singing softly a song Sophia had taught her. Then the blare of a truck horn, blinding headlights, the scream of metal, and then darkness. When Sophia woke up in the hospital, she was told Ava was gone. Her little girl, little, with golden hair, ocean blue eyes, and a smile that could melt any sadness, didn't make it. Damon survived, but he ran the moment he was discharged, leaving Sophia alone with the wreckage of her life. Later, Sophia heard Damon had been found in an alley in Chicago, 2 bullets in his head. The police called it a gang hit. Sophia knew it was the price of debts Damon would never be able to pay. Do you miss her? Harper's voice pulled Sophia back into the present. Do you miss your daughter? Sophia looked into Harper's eyes, warm brown eyes so different from Ava's blue, and yet carrying the same clarity and honesty. Every day I miss her. Every day? Every time I wake up? Every time I go to sleep? Every time I see a child laughing on the street? She's always here. Sophia pressed a hand to her chest where her heart was beating. Here. Harper nodded as if she understood completely. I miss my mom like that too. Dad says Mom didn't disappear. She just moved to live inside my heart. Sophia smiled, and for the first time tonight, the smile reached her eyes. Your dad's right. From the corner of the room, Declan watched in silence. He saw the way Sophia looked at Harper, a gaze threaded with pain and tenderness. He saw the scar on her arm, the kind that came from something terrible, and he saw the way the two of them connected. 2 wounded souls finding comfort and shared grief. Declan had met all kinds of people in his life. He knew how to spot a liar, a betrayer, a dangerous man, but he also knew how to recognize the ones who carried wounds that never truly healed. Sophia was one of them. She was alive, breathing, working, but a part of her had died with her daughter years ago. And somehow, tonight in this small clinic, Harper had touched that dead part and made it tremble back to life. Declan's phone vibrated in his pocket. He looked down at the screen. A message from Silas with an attachment. He opened it and scanned the first lines. His brow tightened. The pieces were starting to fit, and the picture taking shape was anything but pretty. Declan stepped outside the clinic, leaving Sophia and Harper inside to keep talking. The night air hit his face, sharp with cold, but he didn't notice. His eyes stayed locked on his phone as he read line after line of what Silas had just sent. He hit call, and Silas picked up immediately. Boss, I found quite a bit on Ronan Hayes. Talk to me. Ronan Hayes, an accountant at a company called Sunset Logistics. On paper, it's a normal freight and logistics outfit. But when I dug deeper, Silas paused for a beat. Declan could hear keyboard clicks on the other end. Sunset Logistics doesn't exist. I mean, it exists on paper. It's got an address, business licenses, even a website. But there's no real operation, no trucks, no warehouse, no employees beyond a few names on payroll. It's a front. For who? Silence held for a few seconds before Silas answered. Vincent Russo. Declan felt his whole body tighten. Vincent Russo. The name came up like a ghost from the past. A West Coast boss who controlled one of the biggest money laundering pipelines in the country. A man who'd built his empire on the blood and bones of anyone foolish enough to stand in his way. Declan and Vincent had never gone head to head. Their territories didn't overlap, and both men were smart enough to avoid a war that wasn't necessary. But Declan knew exactly what Vincent was. Ruthless, unforgiving, and with no moral limits at all. Anything else? Yeah. Silas took a slow breath. I pulled traffic camera feeds along Highway 65 from the Riverside rest stop back south. I found Ronan Hayes' car, a blue sedan. He left the rest stop in the afternoon alone. Looks that way. But there's a problem. What problem? There was another car. Black sedan, tinted windows, no plates. It shows up on at least 4 different cameras, always holding a short distance behind Ronan Hayes. When Ronan stopped at the rest area and left his daughter, the black car stopped too. Parked on the far side of the lot across the road. Far enough not to be noticed. Close enough to watch. Declan gripped the phone so hard his knuckles went white. They were watching him. Not just watching, boss. They were hunting him. And based on where they parked, I think they saw him leave the kid too. Declan turned his head and looked through the clinic's glass. Harper was still sitting beside Sophia, her small hands wrapped around a carton of milk, her mouth moving as she said something that made Sophia smile. A little girl who didn't know she was in the sights of the most dangerous people Declan had ever encountered. Silas, check if there's anything about the FBI investigating Russo, especially recently. Let me see. Keyboard clicks rattled for a few seconds. Yeah, there have been rumors in the life that the FBI is building a major case against Russo. They've been working on it. And there's talk they've got an inside witness, someone with access to the financial books. Ronan Hayes looks that way. Declan drew a slow breath and stared up at a starless sky. It was starting to make sense. Ronan Hayes hadn't abandoned his daughter. He'd been trying to protect her. He knew Russo was watching, knew he might not survive. And he'd done the only thing he could. He'd hidden Harper in a place the hunters wouldn't think to look, an anonymous rest stop off an empty highway. But if Russo's people saw Ronan leave Harper behind, that meant they knew she existed. And in a world run by men like Russo, children weren't innocent. Children were leverage. Silas, find me a safe house, clean, off the books. Nobody knows about it except you and me. What's going on, boss? Declan looked into the clinic one last time before turning away and walking toward the SUV. We might not be the only ones looking for that little girl. Declan walked back into the clinic. His eyes swept past Harper and stopped on the backpack, still resting neatly in the child's lap. Sophia caught the shift in his expression, a hard edge, a chill she hadn't seen since the moment he first stepped through the door. She stood up instinctively, moving a little closer to Harper. What is it? Declan didn't answer her right away. Instead, he pulled a chair over and sat across from Harper. He lowered his voice to the gentlest tone he could manage. Harper, I need to ask you a few things about your dad. About the last night before he left you at the rest stop, Harper stopped drinking her milk, her brown eyes locked on Declan with a weariness no little girl should ever have. Why do you want to know? Because I think your dad is in danger, and I can't help him if you don't tell me what happened. Harper was quiet for a moment. Her small fingers tightened around the backpack. Then she took a slow breath as if bracing herself to tell a story she'd been trying to keep buried. That night, Dad was really strange, she began, her voice small but steady. Dad stayed up all night. I heard him walking back and forth in the living room. When I went out to look, Dad was crying. Sophia lifted a hand to cover her mouth. Her heart clenched. Your dad cried. Harper nodded. I'd never seen Dad cry, not even when Mom died. Dad always said he had to be strong for me. But that night, he held me and cried. He said he'd done wrong things. He said he was trying to fix them, but there were very bad people who wanted to hurt him. He said if something happened, I had to be brave. A cold line ran down Declan's spine. A father preparing his daughter for the possibility that he wouldn't come back. That wasn't planning for a business trip. That was planning for death. Did he give you anything? Declan asked carefully. Did he tell you to hold on to something important? Harper hesitated. Her eyes flicked down to the backpack, then back to Declan, then to Sophia. She was weighing whether she should trust them. Finally, she slowly unzipped the backpack and reached inside. Dad told me to keep this. Dad said it's the most important thing. Dad said I should only give it to someone I truly trust. Harper pulled out an old notebook. The cover was brown leather, worn and frayed at the edges. She set it on her lap and stared at it for a moment before holding it out to Declan. Dad said it was insurance. I don't understand what insurance is, but Dad said it would keep me safe. Declan took the notebook, feeling its weight in his hands. He opened the first page, and instantly he understood why Ronan Hayes was being hunted. The pages were packed tight with numbers, names, dates, bank account details in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, Singapore. This wasn't ordinary record keeping. It was a detailed map of a massive money laundering pipeline. Each transaction was logged with care, time, amount, source, destination. Declan flipped through, his eyes catching familiar names from the underworld. Businessmen, politicians, judges, all of them tied to one name that appeared again and again, Vincent Russo. These are Russo's books. Declan whispered, his voice gone rough. His entire financial empire is in this notebook. Sophia stepped closer, looking over Declan's shoulder. What does that mean? It means this notebook could put Vincent Russo and dozens of others in prison for the rest of their lives. And it also means anyone holding it becomes his #1 target. Declan kept turning pages, his mind working at a brutal speed. Then he stopped at the inside of the back cover. Something had been taped there, hidden under a thin layer of paper. He peeled it back carefully. A small key dropped into his palm. A brass key, the kind used for locker rentals at train stations or bus terminals. A set of numbers was engraved on the shaft. 47. Did your dad say anything about this key? Declan asked Harper. She nodded, and a brief sadness passed through her eyes. Dad said if something happened to him, I had to take the notebook and the key to a place called Union Station in Kansas City. Dad said there's a locker there, number 47. Dad said inside. There's something that would help me find someone who could protect me. Declan stared at the key in his hand, then at the notebook, then at Harper. The picture sharpened. Ronan Hayes wasn't only running, he was running towards something, trying to deliver something to someone, the FBI most likely, but he knew he might not make it, so he built a backup plan. He put the evidence in his daughter's hands. He left a trail, a place, a number, a hope that if he fell, someone would find Harper and carry on the road he'd started. Kansas City, Declan murmured. A short distance from here. What are you going to do? Sophia asked, her voice tight with fear. Declan stood. He tucked the notebook and the key into the inside pocket of his coat. I'm going to find out what happened to this little girl's father, and I'm going to make sure the people hunting him don't find her. Sophia looked at Harper, then at Declan. A decision formed in her eyes. I'm coming with you. Declan turned back to Sophia, his eyes narrowing. You don't understand what you're saying. The people hunting this little girl aren't the kind of people you want anywhere near your life. Sophia didn't answer right away. She stood there, her face pale under the clinic's yellow light, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. When she finally spoke, her voice shook, but there was a determination in it Declan hadn't expected. Russo. She whispered the name like a curse. Vincent Russo. You know him. Sophia lifted her head. Her blue eyes were full of tears, but not one of them fell. He's the man who destroyed my life. Declan said nothing, waiting. Harper sat still too, wide-eyed, watching Sophia with an understanding that didn't belong to a little girl. The clinic sank into a heavy quiet, broken only by the clock ticking on the wall and Sophia's uneven breathing. My ex-husband, Sophia began, sounding like she was forcing each word past a knot in her throat. Damon. He was addicted to gambling. At first I didn't know. He hid it well. By the time I found out, he already owed a massive amount of money. I thought it was bank debt, credit cards, the kind of thing you could solve. But it wasn't. He owed Russo. Sophia nodded. A single tear finally slid down her cheek. I didn't know until it was too late. Damon borrowed money from Russo's people to pay off gambling losses. But then he took that money and gambled again. The spiral just kept going. The original debt multiplied many times within a short period. Sophia stopped, pulling in a deep breath, like she needed courage just to keep going. That night, Damon came home panicked. He said we had to run immediately. He said they were coming. I didn't understand what was happening. Mia was asleep. I had to wake her up and carry her to the car while Damon drove like a madman. It was pouring. He'd been drinking. I begged him to stop, to let me drive, but he wouldn't listen. Sophia's voice cracked, but she kept going. We made it a short distance before the crash. A truck came at us in the opposite lane. Damon jerked the wheel too hard. Our car went off the road and rolled several times. When I woke up, I saw Mia, my daughter. She was still holding the stuffed bear I bought her for her birthday, but she didn't move. She wasn't breathing. Sophia sobbed without sound, her shoulders shaking. Harper stood and walked over to her, slipping her small hand into Sophia's. The child didn't say anything. She just stood there, letting her presence be comfort. Declan remained motionless, a slow fury smoldering in his chest. He'd heard plenty of tragic stories in his life, but something about the way Sophia told this one, the pain soaked into every word, made it feel like someone was squeezing his heart. "What about Damon?" Declan asked, his voice lower. "He survived," Sophia answered, bitterness sharpening her words. "He survived and ran the moment he left the hospital. He left me alone with the ruins. Later, I heard he'd been shot to death in an alley in Chicago. The police called it a gang hit. But I know it was Russo's men, so he doesn't forgive people who owe him money. No. And he doesn't let anyone live if they know too much." Sophia wiped her tears with the back of her hand, then lifted her chin and looked Declan straight in the eye with the resolve she'd thought she'd lost a long time ago. "For years, I've been living like a ghost, running from everything, running from memories, running from pain, running from myself. I thought if I hid somewhere far enough, quiet enough, I could forget. But tonight, seeing Harper, hearing Russo's name, I realized I can't keep running." "What do you want?" "I want to go with you," Sophia said, her voice steadier than it had been all night. "I want to make sure Russo doesn't destroy another family. I want to make sure Harper doesn't lose her dad the way I lost my daughter. And maybe this is the only way I can keep living." Declan looked at Sophia, then down at Harper, still holding her hand. Two females, one grown and one small, both stripped of the people they loved most, both carrying wounds that would never fully heal, and somehow, in this night, they'd found each other. "You know this is going to be dangerous," Declan said. "These people aren't the kind who show mercy." Sophia nodded. "I know, but I've already lost everything there is to lose. I've got nothing left to be afraid of." Declan was silent for a moment, weighing it. Then he nodded. "All right, but you follow every instruction I give you. No exceptions." Sophia nodded. Harper squeezed her hand tighter. "You're a good person," the girl whispered. "I'm glad you're coming." Sophia dropped to her knees and pulled Harper into an embrace, the kind of embrace she hadn't dared give anyone in years. "I won't let anyone hurt you, I promise." The three of them walked out of the clinic in silence. The night was later now, colder, and the darkness felt thicker, almost heavy. Declan opened the SUV door for Sophia and Harper, waited until they were settled in the back seat, then moved around to the driver's side. He barely started the engine when the phone in his coat pocket vibrated. It wasn't Silas. It wasn't any number he recognized. Declan stared at the screen for a second, then answered, lifting the phone to his ear. "Declan Voss." A man's voice came through the line, younger than Declan expected, but carrying the arrogance of someone used to being feared. "I hear you picked up something that doesn't belong to you tonight." Declan didn't respond. His eyes slid to the rearview mirror, tracking the dark road behind them. "My name is Angelo Russo," the voice continued. "Vincent Russo's nephew." "I think you know that name." "I do." "Good. Then you also know you're getting involved in something that has nothing to do with you. The little girl you're holding, she's got something that belongs to my family. I want it back." Declan glanced in the mirror again. Harper sat beside Sophia, her eyes wide, watching him with worry. She couldn't hear the call, but she could feel the tension filling the car. "What you're talking about is a little child," Declan said evenly, like he was commenting on the weather. "That child is the daughter of a traitor," Angelo snapped. "Her father stole something very important from us, and I've got reason to believe the girl's holding it. So what are you going to do? Kill a kid to get back a few pages of paper? I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect my family." Angelo's voice turned hard. "You've got until tomorrow morning to hand over the girl and whatever she's carrying. After that, we can pretend this little meeting never happened. You go back to your territory. I go back to mine. Nobody has to die." A cold anger rose in Declan's chest. He'd heard threats all his life from men far more dangerous than Angelo Russo. But there was something about a man like that daring to threaten a child that made Declan want to reach through the phone and close his hands around his throat. "Listen," Declan said, his voice dropping into a low, dangerous whisper. "I don't know who gave you my number or who told you that you could call me at midnight and make demands, but I'll tell you this once, and only once. This little girl is under my protection. If I see any of your people come near her, I'll send them back to your uncle in garbage bags. And if you keep pushing me, I'll come see you myself and explain exactly why that's a bad idea." Silence held on the other end for a few seconds. When Angelo spoke again, the confidence had leaked out of his voice. "You're making a big mistake, Voss. You don't know who you're up against. I know exactly who I'm up against. The question is whether you do." Declan ended the call without waiting for an answer. He looked into the rearview mirror again, and his heart beat faster. A short distance back, a black sedan was following them, its headlights off, moving only by the spill of streetlights. "They're tailing us," Declan told Sophia, calm voice, ice in his eyes. "Keep Harper down." Sophia didn't ask questions. She pulled Harper lower on the seat and used her own body as a shield. Declan hit the gas. The Escalade surged forward. The sedan behind them accelerated too. No longer bothering to hide, Declan cut hard onto a side road, then right, then left again, trying to shake the car behind them. At the same time, he called Silas. "Silas?" Plans changed. "Send me the safe house address right now. We've got a tail. Copy that. Sending it now." Declan's phone buzzed with a message containing coordinates. He entered them into the navigation system, and the SUV tore into the night, heading toward the rolling hills. The Escalade turned onto a rough dirt road after a long period of non-stop driving. Declan had shaken the black sedan earlier, but he still checked the rear-view mirror by instinct every few seconds. The trees on both sides of the road grew thicker and thicker, and moonlight slipping through the canopy painted faint ghost-like streaks across the ground. Harper had fallen asleep in Sophia's arms, her face peaceful in a way she couldn't manage when she was awake. The cabin appeared at the end of the road like a dark shape tucked into the forest. No porch light, no sign that anyone was inside. But the moment Declan stopped and killed the headlights, the front door opened and a tall figure stepped onto the porch. Silas Reed, or Silas as Declan usually called him, stood there with his familiar, watchful posture, built like a former Marine, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He'd been beside Declan for many years. From the earliest days when Declan was still building his empire to now, when he was the most powerful man in the Northeast, Silas wasn't just Declan's right hand. He was the only person Declan trusted completely. Boss. Silas nodded as Declan got out. "I set everything up the way you asked. Food, water, clean clothes, and weapons if we need them." Declan nodded and opened the back door so Sophia could lift Harper out. "Still asleep?" "Who's that?" Silas asked, his eyes sliding over Sophia with careful evaluation. "Sophia, she'll be with us for a while." Silas didn't ask anything else. He knew better than anyone that once Declan made a decision, it was final. Inside, the cabin was far warmer than its empty exterior suggested. Silas had lit the fireplace and laid out blankets and pillows on the sofa and on the bed in the small bedroom. Sophia set Harper down on the bed, tucked the blanket around her carefully, then sat beside her, watching the innocent face sunk deep in sleep. "She's so strong," Sophia whispered. Not sure who she was even speaking to, stronger than adults. Harper shifted, her eyes fluttering open. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe." Sophia smoothed the girl's hair. "Go back to sleep. Can you tell me about Mia?" The question stole Sophia's breath for a second. She looked into Harper's brown eyes and saw not childish curiosity, but the understanding of someone who'd lived with loss. Mia liked purple. Sophia began, her voice warmer now. She loved strawberry ice cream and hated broccoli. She wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up because she loved animals. She could talk to the neighbor's cat for hours, like the cat understood everything. Harper smiled faintly. "She's like me. I like talking to animals too." Sophia felt tears rise, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, She took Harper's small hand. Go to sleep. Tomorrow we'll talk more. Harper nodded, her eyes slowly closing. A few minutes later, her breathing evened out again. Sophia stood and stepped into the living room. Declan was outside on the porch by himself, his back to the door, staring into the thick black night that surrounded the cabin. Silas had gone to rest in the back room. Sophia hesitated, then pushed the door open and stepped out. You're not sleeping. Declan didn't turn. I